I'm Dana Harris Seeger. Welcome to my studio in Paulsbo, Washington. Today we are going to do reduction linocut. So let's go. So the first thing I'm going to do is, the first thing that I did was I did some sketches of my idea for a design, and then I used colored pencil and did a color version. And then if I wanted this to be a three color, basically three colors, I did the two other separations. So the one that is going to be the first color, and then the one that's going to be the second, and that will ultimately be the third. And the way that reduction Linocut works is that first you're working with one block. So you're doing multiple colors, but you're only using one block to carve. So each print or each color, you're removing a little bit more of the block. So the first color, you're just using, removing the white. So I'm just removing the white. So I'm just removing the white from this initial block, and I'm going to print it in the lightest color. And then the next, and I'm going to print as many as I think I need or want. And then I'm going to carve a little bit more away and leave just what I want to print blue. So in a sense, I'm carving away everything I want to keep this peachy color. And then I'm going to print it. And so you can see that in this image, it has some of that green already covered, but that's okay because on the third carving, I'm going to carve away the parts that I want to remain blue, and then that will be just the green areas will remain. I know it's a little complicated, but you'll see it as the process unfolds. So I've got this Battleship linoleum, and the reason I like the Battleship linoleum is because it's durable, it withstands many prints, and as opposed to woodcut, you can carve in any direction. There's no grain. So to initially put my design on the block, I sketched out my first color, kind of just loosely. And then I used a transfer paper, which was this white chalk. You can make your own or buy just wax-free transfer paper. You put that face down on your block, and then you can put your sketch, making sure that it's aligned with the block. But remember that because we're printing a linocut, it's going to be a mirror image. So what I did to remedy that is I sketched out my design first, like I did it like this. First on tracing paper, I just traced over my initial lines, and then instead of using my initial drawing, I took that traced drawing, let's line it up like this on the block, and I flipped it over. So now I have a mirror image on the block, which means that when I go to print, it's actually going to be correct the way that I drew it originally in the ultimate print. So then I took a pencil and just traced my lines using the carbon paper, the transfer paper underneath, and wherever I pushed, that's where the lines got transferred. And then when I removed them, the design was transferred. And it doesn't rub off if you use this wax-free transfer paper. The white is easier to see on the Battleship linoleum. You could also just start sketching. You can see that I have some pencil lines on the block as well. And then I just start carving as I would a regular linoleum block. Got some texture here. I'm removing, again, the white areas. So everything that I want to stay white, everything that I want to remain white, I'm carving away, because that's going to stay white the whole time. So I carved away this texture, and I'm carving away the roofs and the doors. And I'm just using a regular Linocut tool with removable gouges. That should pop out. Sometimes it's easier than others. And then once you remove that, you can swap them out with, probably use this big scooper tool, insert that into the chuck. Some sets come where each gouge is separate, but it works the same. It's the same basic principle. So a little bit easier to switch between these, but this is cheaper. So right now I'm using these, and when I carve, I am keeping my bracing hand either next to, parallel to, or behind my carving hand, because the last thing I want to do is cut myself by pushing too hard with my gouge and cutting my bracing hand. So you always, always, always keep your non-carving hand behind your carving hand. And I can see that I need to remove some of this. All right, so now you can see maybe a little bit closer how I'm using the tool to remove the linoleum. And you don't have to go super deep unless you're removing a wide area. And even still, if your brayer, what you're going to put the ink on, is wide enough, then you can span that distance and you won't have to worry about getting any of these gouge marks. So it's easier to hold, I think, to hold the block like this than try to have like tiny little area of gripping. So it's better to rotate your block so that you are always keeping it ergonomic for you. You don't have to scoop it out either. You can come at it, you can stop, come at it from another direction instead of risking slipping and gouging too much. So if you're finding that your block is slipping like this, sliding around, some of those non-skid little mats help. The kind that you put on your, you know, for your dishes, carpets and things like that. And you can always remove, so you can always remove linoleum, but you can't bring it back. So instead of trying to carve too much, you can finish a set and then pull a proof. And that means that it might not be the finished version, but you'll just test it. It's like a tester, and you can see where you're at. If you need to remove more at that point, you can. If it's chipping or if it's just not easy to carve, then try warming it up with like a hair dryer or something. So I'm going to focus on the reduction technique in this video, but I might also have a Linocut tool tutorial just because it's it's a technique unto itself. And it's always easier technique-wise to go from a point outward, especially if you don't want to accidentally carve too much of your design away. So I try to go from like a corner out or an edge out. That way you can see as it sort of slips, it doesn't slip into your design. I'm also cutting on a self-healing mat. That's not necessary, but if you like the surface of your table, then I advise getting and cutting on a self-healing mat, because even if you gouge it, it's not going to damage whatever surface you have the mat on. You can go slow, as slow as you need to, until all the elements are carved to your satisfaction. And then we'll print the first color. Okay, so the next part of this is going to be inking the block. So now that I have my press calibrated and everything set up before I start inking, what I want to do is run a test proof, and I'm going to mix up some ink, and then I'm going to use this brayer to roll it on my block, just like that. I'm using this block printing ink, which is water-based. And it is supposedly processed colors, so we'll see if they're transparent. Kind of wanted to try these out before I used them or anything else. Normally I use Speedball block printing ink, which is water-based. Or you can use an oil-based ink. Doesn't really matter. It's just these dry faster. The water-based inks dry faster, so it's nice to have that component too. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the red at a time. Kind of want to mix up enough to do your addition. Once I get the color I want, I can add some more. And I can do a drawdown on a blank piece of paper, which is just picking up a little bit of my ink and kind of smearing it on there to see what it actually looks like. So it's still a little yellow, but I do like the transparency because this is going to be the first layer and I want the other subsequent layers to overlay on top. So I'll just keep working on that, adding some ink as I go, and then I'll print. You can see I'm working on this glass palette because that makes cleanup a lot easier. Depending on how much opacity, how much coverage you want your colors to be, your layers to be, you might want to use a more opaque ink if you don't want them to blend together, because sometimes with this reduction method you get unexpected results where, like if I was going to lay a blue over this, you can see how blue and yellowish would make green, and if I didn't want that, then I would want it to lay more opaquely on top. So I might need to add some white or something that would make it more solid. That's more the color I was looking for. All right, so I'm kind of lay it out like that. And I have a whole video on the proper inking for block printing, so you can watch that if you're not sure. All right, now it's time to put it on the press. So now I always want to have the same direction. So I know that these little V's are going to point that way, because subsequently every print is going to get placed in the same position. So down here, lay it on, put my board on, and then my blankets. Now I'm going to roll it through. And we'll see how the ink transferred. You could do this by hand if you wanted to. You could burnish the top by hand, but this gives a very even coverage. So there's the first print. And I just print them over and over again until I have all the first colors that I want. So now when I'm ready to clean, I'll take some paper towel, blot up anything that's left. This can get wiped down with either a baby wipe or water. Water will warp the linoleum. This you should, if it's water-based, you should clean it up with water. And then I just scoop up the excess and then clean it with a paper towel and a little Windex. And then as soon as this is clean, we are ready to carve the next color. Okay, so now that we've printed our color number 1, now it's time to use our separation sketch and carve away everything that we want to stay this pink color. So all of this is all going to get carved away. The window and the middle part is all going to get carved away. And to help me, I could retrace my drawing. It goes like this. I could retrace my drawing, or I could just sort of use this as a guide and just sketch it out, which I think I'll do. So this is all going to get carved away. I can X that out. This part here is going to stay, but this part here is going to get removed, and this is going to get removed. All right, so now I can start carving. I grab my tools again. And the first thing I kind of want to do is just outline those edges where I'm going to remove. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not so good. Because you don't want to take that much away. Not so good. Okay, so now it's time to ink up, to create color number 2 and ink up the second version of our plate. So just want to make sure that they're all going in the same direction. So that's the way that they're going. This is right side up, because registration will be really important for this next color. So I've got my brayer. I'm going to do another drawdown. I've got a little mixer. And then I'm going to make, I want it to be sort of a pale grayish blue. So I'm going to mix white with blue and hopefully orange will kind of make it sort of a grayish. This blue to make it kind of opaque. We'll see what that looks overlaid onto. Okay, this is what it's going to look like on its own. And overlaid. So it will be a little bit greenish. But I think that's going to be okay. I might lighten it up a little bit though. Yeah, I think that's a little closer to what I'm going for. So, this one should be a little bit more opaque because I'm using the regular block printing colors and not just the process colors, which tend to be more transparent. If there's parts that need to be removed, I can see that right away. And I can take my tool and carve before I print. But when you do that, you just need to make sure that you're not leaving any of these little nubbins behind. Flip it upside down. Okay, and then do one final. Take it to the press. So now when I put my piece back in there, it should be in exactly the same space. And I'm going to put this first print, which is dry, face down. And lay in the same position that it did before. Roll it through. And then when we reveal the print, it's an exact registration, and now only the there's blue everywhere except for what is I've carved away and left that color. So now we're just going to keep printing. If you're wondering about the registration that I'm using, I've got a whole video on different types of registration. One that's a little bit more accurate, I guess, when it comes to multiple colors. It's using pins, the Terrence Burton's pin system. For something this small, this is pretty straightforward, but something larger you might want to use, or more complex, you might want to use that method, which I have on my YouTube. So now I just pulled a print that is just the blue, and since I like to teach this method, I wanted to show students the different separations and how they line up and what they look like when they're not printed together. So this is just the blue, and I'm going to leave one that's just the sort of peach so that students can see how the print progresses on the block. Because once I carve away, I can't go back. So the final step is going to be to carve away everything I want to stay blue. So things I don't want to be green. So that is going to be all of these guys are going to go away. And I can kind of finish that. These are going to go away. All right. See what it's done. Alrighty, now we are on to color number 3. So that is this greenish color, which hopefully will be green. An overlay onto this one. Looks like that. Alright, so I'm going to use some the blue that I already had, and some yellow, and a bit of black, just a teensy bit. Yellow and black kind of make green. So this is what it's going to look like when it's covering over everything, which I think needs a little bit more yellow, maybe even some red. I like that. It's a little bit brownish, but we'll see. We shall see. Okay. I think it'll be transparent enough that the blue will come through. Trying to avoid these really open areas if I can, just to keep from getting too much ink where I don't want it. The nice thing about working on the press is that it makes everything flat, so when you print, even if you get ink on that, it won't really it tends to not pick it up in the print. All right, let's go see what that looks like. Big reveal.